Gauging a publisher's success in 2020 is a fool's errand, although Marvel Comics has held relatively steady throughout the tumultuous pandemic-impacted year. There are few, if any, new series launches that have taken comics by storm, but last year's good books have either remained strong or improved. The line is significantly bolstered by the post-House of X Powers of 10 X-Men lineup of comics, with a remarkably high batting average across a Dawn of X wave that's grown over 10 series. Likewise, Immortal Hulk continues making its case for Marvel's best comic, and properties from Guardians of the Galaxy to Deadpool receive creative overhauls and shots of adrenaline. Today I'll answer, what are the best Marvel comics of the year? How do all X-Men comics in the Dawn of X rank compared to one another? And what are the high-profile comics that didn't make the cut on my list? I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. If you like the CBH YouTube channel or podcast, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Spoilers for some discussed comics may follow. First up, I want to go through honorable mentions. First on my list, Guardians of the Galaxy, a very good comic book from two great creators, Al Ewing and Juan Cabal, that just hasn't hit a home run for me yet. Most likely to make it onto the big list by year's end, I would say, but again, through 5 issues, I'm invested, I'm interested in where this is going. I love Juan Cabal's art and layouts, but it has not made it onto my top 10 list. Black Cat, issues 8 through 12 have come out so far in 2020. This book is so much better than I ever would have guessed. We've got writing by Jed MacKay, interiors often by Chris Anka. It's a very good-looking book. There's a crossover with Black Cat and Wolverine, post-Krakoa era that I really dug. I think it's issue 7 or 8. Again, it's way better than I would have anticipated, but not quite on the list. And then the final one here is Venom. So issues 22 to 31 are included in the 2020 consideration. If I wasn't so entirely out on the post-Absolute Carnage Venom Island arc, Venom would be back on among the best. It's been on my best of list the last couple years for Marvel. The Venom Beyond arc that's going on right now has been substantially more enjoyable for me, but again, I would keep it off the list entirely. And then as a final shout out here, the entire Marvel The End one-shots were way better than expected, but Venom The End in particular was one of my favorite comics of the year. So I'm not including it on the top 10 list because it's, just a one-shot, but that comic is absolutely amazing. I highly recommend people read it. It will be on my best of 2020 just overall, not just for Marvel consideration. Comics I think will be on my final list by year's end: Shang-Chi #1, that hasn't come out at the time of recording. The entirety of Ten of Swords, I am fully invested and interested in. If you're following along with Crack and Krakoa, my X-Men deep dives here on the Comic Book Herald channel, you know that full well. And then Eternals, the new series launched by writer Kieran Gillen with art by Esad Ribic, who I absolutely adore. Very excited for that book to launch. I could see all 3 of these books making a best of 2020 for Marvel by year's end. But again, at the time of recording, they are not up for consideration. So instead, we're going to count it down from 10 to 1, starting with my 10th favorite book of the year, Deadpool by Kelly Thompson and Chris Bachalo. Relevant issues here are Deadpool #1 to #9. Despite her standing as writer of Marvel's Captain Marvel, the 2020 relaunch of Black Widow, and the relaunched Deadpool, Kelly Thompson remains one of the most underrated Big 2 superhero comics writers. Her previous works across the likes of Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, clearly established her bona fides, and I expect this is only the start of good things to come. On Deadpool, Thompson gets to work with legend Chris Bachalo on the humor and surprise heart that comes when Wade Wilson becomes king of the monsters, who will also have a legal claim to Staten Island, New York. It's an endearing take on a decidedly overexposed character, and a run I hope we get to enjoy for a good long while. I really enjoyed recently as well the Deadpool #6, which is a Krakoa-era X-Men crossover that really pokes some fun and holes at the X-Men and their whole Krakoa franchise in a way that Deadpool is best suited for. So this book has been fun. I'm not always invested in ongoing Deadpool series, but this one I've enjoyed. #9, we have Strange Academy. Relevant issues here are Strange Academy #1 to #6. Scotty Young and Humberto Ramos' Strange Academy is built on such a strong premise, it would have taken a truly dismal launch to tamper the excitement for this work. A school of magic set in the Marvel Universe, technically set up by Doctor Strange, but really run and operated by the various other magical Marvel beings we know. People like Brother Voodoo, Ileana Rasputin is around, Scarlet Witch, etc. It's too good to pass up. So yes, Hogwarts meets Wolverine and the X-Men is a great pitch, and in the very early going, the content delivers. I have enjoyed this. Again, we're only 2 issues deep at the time of this recording, but having a school full of students from realms like, Asgard, the realm of the Frost Giants, having like Dormammu's son, again, it's very reminiscent of the Jason Aaron written Wolverine and the X-Men, but so far off to a good start. And it's just a good idea to bring all the magical elements into something a little more fun than a lot of times they get to do just in the pages of Doctor Strange. So my number 8 pick is the whole darn X-Men universe, with one exception, which we'll get to as we move down the list. Is it a cheat to include the entire Dawn of X? Of course. It's also deeply true and a testament to how much I'm loving this X-Men revival and how close in quality so many of the series tend to rank. But speaking of ranks, here's how I'd place every single X-Men title so far prior to Ten of Swords, with the, again, one that I'm holding out to talk about as we continue down this list. So here's the rankings. Marauders, X-Force, Empire X-Men, Hellions, X-Factor, Giant Size X-Men, Cable, X-Men Fantastic Four, Wolverine, Excalibur, and New Mutants. The only two there that I would say I really, really critically kind of out on, Excalibur, which I think I've talked about a lot. I'm interested. I go back and forth on that one a lot. And then New Mutants, which is increasingly just feeling like a dud to me. Next up on the list, we have Hawkeye Freefall. Relevant issues here. It's a 6-issue mini. Writer Matthew Rosenberg is very well suited for the voice of Clint Barton. As we've seen previously in Tales of Suspense, Hawkeye and Winter Soldier, Rosenberg and artist Otto Schmidt follow headfirst in the tradition of Fraction and Aja, with Hawkeye sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, getting said nose broken over and over, and avenging the only way he knows how, usually face first in a trash heap. In many ways, I want more Rosenberg and Schmidt on Hawkeye than this 6-issue mini, but it's probably also true that the series benefits from a set endpoint, as stories so often do. If you dug the antagonistic buddy team-up of Buck and Hawkeye, or if that just sounds fun, we saw that in Tales of Suspense, or you're just a huge Clint Barton fan, Hawkeye fans unite, this is a very satisfying 6-issue mini. Again, Hawkeye Freefall, well worth the read. Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther. We only have 4 relevant issues so far published in 2020, but I can't help but think there's going to be a lot of retrospective analysis in the future that wonders how Marvel Comics fans took simultaneously runs on Black Panther and Captain Marvel by Ta-Nehisi Coates for granted. You can frequently hear the resonance of Cates' impassion between the world and me in his narrative poetry, and that's an absolutely remarkable addition to any comic book landscape. I'm more invested in Black Panther at this point. Coates' work on Cap is deeply interesting and very much follows in the political intrigue of Brubaker and Epting, and the entire intergalactic Empire of Wakanda story is precisely the kind of unexpected left turn that injects fresh life and transformative thinking into the world of Wakanda. Sending T'Challa to the outer reaches of space has allowed Coates the freedom to explore the legacy of slavery, the trauma of plundered culture, and the inevitable compromises of powerful nations. And of course, amid all that intelligent examination, there's a bad guy in a symbiote panther suit designed by Daniel Acuna, so the book looks absolutely awesome and action-packed as well. Doctor Doom is another really fun one for me. There's only the final 3 issues of the first 6-issue story arc that count here. As much as I love Doctor Doom, literally my favorite villain of all time, he's not an easy character to work into a solo series. Marvel's 70s supervillain team-up is built around Doom, and it misses as often as it hits. And while exceptions like the Ed Brubaker written books of Doom stand out, Doom's often at his best integrated into the larger Marvel tapestry. For a villain with an ego this large, he's really dependent on fitting in with the players around him. Halt and Catch Fire's Christopher Cantwell and Salvador Larroca take on the Doom challenge by cutting the Emperor off from Latveria, while the nation is very much under siege, and removing him from the safety of his armors, Doombots, and loyalists. It's Doom fending for himself with his mask and his magic, embroiled in political and time travel, mysteries that center around visions of the future with him building a better world. There's a surreal Elseworlds-like quality to the narrative, and it suits Doctor Doom, really, really well. I think it's good to take him out of the sort of continuity-obsessed Marvel Universe for a moment and just get a real dig into who is Vector Von Doom and what does he do, when the lights are off. Strikeforce. Relevant issues here are Strikeforce number 5 to number 9 as we make our way down the best Marvel Comics of 2020. Marvel's been into mashup radio with their character lineups at an accelerating pace since at least 2014's Original Sin, where much of the hook was things like Doctor Strange and Punisher teaming up. As such, we're increasingly inundated with offbeat team rosters and a real see-what-sticks approach to series. Punisher Kill Crew stands out as a good recent example. Post-War of the Realms, again, a book where it's oddball team-ups, and it's very fun. Strikeforce by Tini Howard and German Peralta is the latest example where an entirely, team roster coalesces into a genuinely strong entry in the Marvel Pantheon. We have Blade, Monica Rambeau, Spider-Woman, Wiccan, Angela, Winter Soldier, and kinda Damon Hellstrom come together to stop dark supernatural threats. It's the kind of lineup you'd get zero team boost playing in Ultimate Alliance 3, but it'd be fun as hell, and that's exactly what Strikeforce delivers, right? It's just a fun time. It's characters you wouldn't expect together, but that actually fit by the end of this pretty well. Daredevil. We're now at number 3 on the best comics countdown of Marvel books published in 2020. Relevant issues included here are Daredevil 16 to 25 and Daredevil Annual number 1. I've talked about this recently on the podcast My Marvelous Year, covering Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli's Daredevil Born Again, but there's something about The Man Without Fear that brings out some of the absolute best work from creators. As much as I like Chip Zdarsky's work across Sex Criminals and White Trees, I was definitely unprepared to be 25 issues into his Daredevil run and wondering where it fits in the pantheon of great works. And that's the thing. It fits. From Miller to Nocenti to Bendis to Brubaker to Wade, Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cicchetto, Jorge Fornes, and other collaborators are making yet another classic run on Matt Murdock. It's pretty incredible. The whole ride isn't necessarily splashy or headline grabbing as the likes of Hickman's X-Men or Immortal Hulk, but don't sleep on Daredevil when it makes a case for the top slot each and every issue. Speaking of top slot, Immortal Hulk, it's my number 2. Really kind of a 1B, you know, at this point, like it's so good. You don't need me to sell you on Immortal Hulk, I don't think. I will say, given the relevant issues of 2020, which is going to be Immortal Hulk 29 to 41, Al Ewing, Joe Bennett, and friends work on Immortal Hulk. It's a shoo-in on any best of Marvel list for as long as the series runs, and I think we're in through at least 2021. And the early 2020 stretch is one of the weirder and at times thrilling pieces of the story. The inclusion of their version of Zemnu, a long-forgotten Defenders villain, and the oversized Immortal Hulk number 33, which doubles as a oversized Legacy number 750 issue. It's deeply satisfying and sets the stage for some anticipated, I think some of this was predictable, but pitch perfect story drops. So I'm totally on for the ride, and if you have not yet hopped onto Immortal Hulk, again, start with issue 1, read the whole thing. It's well worth the time. So my favorite comic book, though, of 2020 will be no surprise to the Kraken Krakoa loyalists. It's X-Men, written by Jonathan Hickman with art primarily by Lionel Francis Yu and Mahmoud Asrar. There's absolutely nothing in comics that gets me as excited or engages me as thoroughly as New X-Men written by Hickman. It's not the best comic, shouts to Ice Cream Man from Image here, but it sure is the one I talk about endlessly on Kraken Krakoa. Hickman's 2020 X-Men kicked off the year with the best issue of the post-House of X Powers of 10 ongoing in X-Men number 4, and has remained deeply captivating ever since. I'm a huge fan of the long-term planning, the information seeding, and the non-linear approach to an ongoing run. Bring on Ten of Swords. I could not be more excited. Again, every time there's a new issue of X-Men, you know that there's just going to be new information that connects back, however limited, right? We're getting little bits here and there, right? We're not getting a full story as much as we might crave it, but I have to admit the little bits and pieces and then allowing the mystery and theories to build is a big part of why I enjoy comics. So what are your favorites of the year? If you thought some of these fit and you agree, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. But more importantly, what did I miss that I should either read or consider for best of the year? I know, again, I talked about the honorable mentions up front. I covered some of the bigger ones. I didn't mention Thor there, written by Donny Cates with art by Nick Klein, which I've talked about recently here on the channel, but definitely as a mixed bag of 6 issues for me. I think it's a great looking comic with a underwhelming story so far. That was definitely one of Marvel's bigger launches this year. But in Empire, their big event right now, I don't have anything from that on this list either. Empire is pretty flat for me, I have to say, as an event. And that's why it's not there. But if you disagree or there are other comics that you think should be on the list, definitely let me know in the comments. I'm interested in hearing what people have to say. So thanks to everybody over at patreon.com/comicbookherald for supporting the site and the content here. In particular, thank you to the mysterious benefactors. These are the individuals who donate $10 a month to Comic Book Herald to keep the site running and keep cool work like this coming out. Jeff Zach Rives, Ron Paul Kirkley, Jesse W., Robert Mickelson, Professor Pride, Steve Brennan, Cole Weathers, Martin Lopez, Chris Isidro, and Darren Clark. Thank you so much for your support this month. I'm Dave. You can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com. At Comic Book Herald. You can look for the best comics ever in My Marvelous Year podcast for more. So thanks so much, everybody, for listening. And as always, enjoy the comics.